welcome Simon to the show.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's really great to have you on the show. So, obviously, I was checking out all your stuff beforehand, and I mean, you are just like you've had such an amazing life. So, maybe just for the sake of my audience, and if somebody hasn't heard of you or know a bit about you, I watched your very entertaining, and I've never had an about me video as entertaining as your about me video. We have to link it in the description, but please
Thank,
introduce yourself to the show and tell us a little bit about who you are.
thank you. So I am undergoing what might be called a metamorphosis or a transformation. And it's interesting that in the transformation process, or the metamorphic process of a caterpillar into a butterfly, that middle bit in the cocoon, the organism turns literally to mush
Yeah.
and then rebuilds itself. So there's a little bit of mushness going on in my life.
Right.
So I started calling myself the naked speaker in around August of last year. So my kind of very brief, kind of 1 minute linear history is I was born in the 60s. I don't tell people my age anymore because I noticed that two things happen when I tell people my age. One is people go, oh, okay, you'll say you're that age, or oh, you're that age. And it's like this boxing thing that happens. Oh, I can relax because they're my age,
Yeah.
or not, or older, or younger. And then the other is I noticed that I don't tell my age because I feel like a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
energy. And when I say my actual age, I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I was born in the 60s, and then my father was a clergyman, an Anglican minister. Moved to Durban here in South Africa between the ages of 3 and 10, which was where my kind of real love of South Africa first came into being. And then went back to England, finished off my schooling. I joined the British Army. I joined the army because I didn't know what else to do, and I liked exercise and it was a good opportunity for kind of leadership and so on and so forth. I actually lived in Germany for a year in a place called Paderborn.
Oh.
Good. And I learned some German, and it was really, really cool. I had the best time. I have a real soft spot for Germans. I really do.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Whilst all the other British troops were like, ooh, Germany, ooh, and heading back to England for the weekend, I was like having a great time. Uh, and then after that, I bicycled from one end of Africa to the other, from Cape Town back to the UK.
That must be amazing.
Yeah, that was incredible in 1993. And so, that was a really kind of formative time in South Africa's history. And it was so interesting, being in 93, we'd been here with my then partner 2 weeks when Chris Hani was assassinated, and it looked like everything was going to blow up. And it was just this contrast. You heard me say this word contrast probably a lot, is that there was this contrast of being on the road and just overwhelming friendliness and welcoming and greetings. And then we'd stay invariably in farms where it was just doom and gloom. This country's about to explode, and here we are. In South Africa, it feels like the minute hand just stopped like 1 minute before midnight and just has never moved past it. We just keep going. It's extraordinary. And then I then studied photojournalism, and then about 25 years ago, I discovered this thing called personal development, which, and then I started coaching at the end of the .com, kind of before the .com bubble burst, which was extraordinary. And I've kind of been doing that ever since, and then transitioned into facilitating. But my real first love is public speaking.
And you got your first public speaking stint on a bus, a double-decker bus in London. Is that true? What happened there?
Yeah, so my dad was an amazing speaker, but I just never got the speaking bug for some reason or another. And I was in the process of coming back to South Africa in 1999, and I found myself in Brixton Main Road. Brixton is a kind of rough, tough.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, right. Kind of attitude. And there's a Brixton, South Africa as well, which is also rough, tough. And And so there was all this action and noise on the street. And then this bus pulled up and it was completely full, 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and silent.
Oh, wow. And you felt the need to break the silence.
I did.
And what did you talk about?
My big thing was South Africa. I was coming back. I was so fired up about what I discovered about personal development. All the lights came on for me because I had no training in communication and what does responsibility mean? What does following your heart mean? I had no idea about any of that. And so I was really, I was really excited. And I wanted to just say, come on, there's more to life than this. You could be sat next to a future spouse or a business partner or something like, what if? And I thought if we were 7-year-olds on the bus, it would be a party, And so it was my kind of love of South Africa that got me to stand up. And I walked to the front of the bus and turned around. And I was the only person standing and facing the wrong way. And I just didn't know what to say, but I started. And then what I experienced and what I have experienced a lot is something I call the magic teleprompter. And the magic teleprompter, so I didn't know what to say, but in the act of speaking, it just, and that's the power of courage, which is I think if there's one thing I had on my headstone, I hope it would be courage, or live with courage, brackets, mostly when he wasn't scared.
No, but it's true. I've experienced that magic teleprompter that you actually don't know what you're going to say next, but then you know just before the end of saying something what the next thing has to be, and it kind of just flows.
But look, it's happening here.
Yeah.
You've got a bit of a script, I've got a bit of an we've got some, but it's just, as I'm speaking, I'm not thinking I must now say these words. They're just.
Well, that's what makes it flow, because I have actually sat behind the camera and interviewed, because we do sort of thought leadership with some of our clients and our executives, and they sit behind and then I'm trying to, from behind the camera, coach them into being warm, but they see the script in their eyes and they've actually memorized it. They're not actually looking at you. They're actually reading the script in their eyes. And I'm trying to tell them, come out of your eyes, stop reading, stop trying to memorize it, relax. And it sounds terrible when it isn't. Just, I suppose, to your point, courage, like have the courage to drop the script, go off script, and be warm and natural and connect.
Absolutely, because that's what we want, isn't it? Like I was thinking, think of an engineering type financial CEO, and he's saying this and this and this, and what we really want is like, tell us about your first date.
That's true.
What was the biggest mistake you ever made in business, or when was your most embarrassing moment? Because that can just come alive.
The vulnerability. Everyone talks about this new word, well, it's not a new word, but authenticity. But I think to your point, authenticity is connected with vulnerability, and vulnerability is connected with courage. And you wrote a book on courage.
Yes. So, and these grand words, as you say, authenticity, integrity. It's like, do you actually know what that means?
Yeah.
Because it's hard, and the gifts are bounteous, right? So, but it's like, I'm being authentic. I'm just saying what I feel. No, that's not authentic. Authentic comes from, as you say, the vulnerability. Brené Brown, who did that amazing TED talk, she said, vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity.
Wow.
We've got to be willing to do that. And the word vulnerability comes from the Latin vulnerare, which means to cut or to wound.
Oh.
So, hey, I'll happily wound myself. That's the degree of courage that it takes to open our hearts and say, I don't know what to do. Like, my naked speaker thing, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, really? Like,
I'm so glad you're doing it. You have to be the Liberace. You have to wear lights to stand out. You have to take your clothes off. There's so many, people in this space, in every space, doing the same thing. Like, how are you going to stand out? And I love the naked speaker angle. How did you come up with it? Is that obviously associated with the vulnerability angle? Is that the?
all of it. I mean, it's all, if it's not vulnerability, it's not real. I've never said that before, but I think that's kind of how it is, like, I mean, what you and I are doing now, we're just ebbing and flowing and riffing in the conversation. We're being vulnerable because we don't know what's going to show up next. But so far, for me at least, this is just a joyous, beautiful, flowing experience,
No, I agree.
Yeah. So, so I wrote a book on courage, and I think there was quite a lot of ego in it when I look back on it.
Yeah.
There was vulnerability in it, but I was fearful of a lot, but I almost like I couldn't name it, or I didn't know what. I've done these talks, over 1,000 talks, and that in and of itself was amazing, and some of the stuff that happened was extraordinary. And then I got invited to a naked poetry event, as you do, in Nordhook, of course, right?
Of course, has to be Nordhook. Out there.
Run, of course, by a Dutch guy, right?
Gets more interesting.
And I was around February last year. I started to just hang on a second. This is my life. I'm over halfway, probably through my life. What's it to be? What's it to be? And I had on the face of it, I had a kind of a conventional life. Married, 2 kids, living in a nice house. But I had this I almost felt like an eagle that would go out into the world and spread my wings and then come back and And so I recognized, okay, so I got an invitation to the Naked Poetry event, and I looked at this thing and I went, "You're kidding. You're kidding." Yeah, I kind of wanted to go. I wasn't sure. This was too weird anyway, I went. And the lights just came on. Lights came on. And the lights came on because it was very beautifully apportioned, fire, there was some snacks, it was non-sexual, just an opportunity to be naked and read some vulnerable poetry that you'd written, ideally. And I wrote this poem about love, and my God, and it just loaded out, just like, wow, we're starting down with something about love. And I realized just that's it. That's what it's all about.
I drive like 120, 130 is my max. And I'm always just behind the trucks. I will not go in that fast lane. It's scary.
Fantastic.
So you were busy talking about your book, Courage.
Yeah. And so the Naked Speaker thing, and it's I'm leading to really wanting to heartfully share a big realization that I hope will be useful to you and your listeners. So the Naked Poetry event, go along, read, and after the first 30 seconds, it's just there's bodies, I mean, nothing you'd see different on anything you chose to look at, Netflix or, growing up or whatever it's just bodies. And all that disappeared. And then this beautiful authenticity just floated to the surface as people just read their pieces of poetry. And then I went shortly after that. I was like, oh, and then I started experimenting with this naked thing. And I went to a naked dinner party. It's kind of interesting. And there was no sex involved. It was just, my only, nakedness was synonymous, a lot to do with sex, or change rooms at school or sex in a personal capacity. It wasn't just, here I am, and there was this weird freedom that I felt. And then I went to the Northern Cape on a 10-day solo road trip and came back like, I felt like, I don't know, someone had disappeared off into the desert and came back a different person because I took my clothes off, for 10 days. And there is a serious message to what I'm saying. It's not like this crazy guy does this naked speak. Actually, there is a very significant message to all of this.
Yeah.
And because otherwise, what the hell am I doing?
Exactly.
And I'm a nut, right? Like I'm just a nut, right? Hopefully not. I'm trying to make sense. A friend of mine said to me recently, she said, you know what you're doing? You're bringing nakedness to the mainstream. And I'll say what background to that. So I went off to the Northern Cape, and I just was naked, and there was no one around. And Northern Cape's not many people around. And I had the wildest time. I got pulled aside by the police. I was driving naked, and like, it was just amazing. It was amazing because no one, what I thought people would think and how they would react wasn't.
Mm.
So one of my big realizations has been, and it came from that talk on the bus, was, and I'm sure you've had this experience as well. It's like there were two what's the word I'm looking for? Two beings that I noticed on the bus. So the one is what I call the truth, which is here in the body. In my case on the bus, it was like, I'll make a speech. That'd be amazing. You'd have a story to tell some people. Who knows what'll happen? Like pure creativity and self-expression and joy. And then what I call the chimp or the maniac in our heads, right? Speak right. The maniac in my head that says, what do people think? You'll only embarrass yourself. Well, that stuff. So that's what I've been navigating, those two worlds. And when I listen consciously and thoughtfully and mindfully to this, it's always right.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not that it's always going to be easy. So yeah, I had this idea to be the naked speaker when I was coming back from the Northern Cape, and there's a whole lot of story behind what happened. That I left my family. I left my wife when I came back, and so that was in August last year. Now, so what's the piece? What is the piece about the nakedness? I said I'd written a book on courage, but there was one thing I just couldn't do, but I wanted to do, and I knew that I would go to the grave with this feeling, and that feeling was, I want to be naked. I just want to be naked. Not, on some kind of intergalactic, evangelistic mission, but I just loved that feeling that I had at that naked poetry event, just feeling naked. And I realized that a lot of what I'd been doing in my work and the book on courage was around emotional nakedness, vulnerability, courage, and so on. But this physical nakedness, I couldn't go there. And I started to, well, it didn't take me long, but I started to look at why that was. And there was all this body shaming that I'd experienced growing up. And I'm reliably informed I'm not the only one.
Right.
So I had this very harsh relationship with myself. Critical, unkind, lacking compassion. Look at myself in the mirror. I mean, of course, that voice is still there. I look at myself in the mirror and go, you got too much of this, not enough of that. That's not this is not, like all that commentary. And yet if I spoke to my children like that, or my friends like that, or my business colleagues, I would have no one in my life.
Wow.
And so there was this particular piece. I was writing about it today. So there was, and I'm sharing not because I'm just sharing. I'm really trying to be deliberate in my sharing, Dylan.
Yeah.
Because I think this is really important for us as human beings. We've got to form a relationship with ourselves. Got to love ourselves.
Body, soul, and spirit.
And all this courage stuff, all this goals and all that stuff. But I used to ask people when I don't do so much coaching now, but I used to ask people to fill out a form, that wheel of life, and it looks like a bicycle wheel. And one of the sections was, what's your primary relationship, and rated between 1 and 10. In 25 years, I've never once thought, and no one had ever said, my primary relationship was with myself. It had always been God or spouse or whatever. And I realized that until I really got to know, and it's a process, haven't got there, I don't think we ever get there, but unless and until I started to love and respect myself and start to share that message with people. Now, the big challenge that I had to get through was an incident particularly that happened. I took body shaming. My father, for heaven's sake, I mean, the things parents say to their kids, right? I mean, my dad used to say, you got the, when I was a kid, the first the first time I ever thought there's something wrong with my body was when my dad said I was probably about 8, and he said, you've got the biggest head in Christendom. You caused your mother so much pain she couldn't walk for a week, right? And I was like,
Okay. That's terrible.
but you know what it's like in life. These things just kind of pass us by, but some of them just go, stay. And then we shut down on so many areas in life. I shut down because I just couldn't go to certain places. If I worked out that if I get stopped in one area, I get stopped in many other areas as well.
Wow.
And so, and then the big incident that happened for me that was when I was a young man. I was at the military academy, Sandhurst, and I got drunk on my 21st birthday. And then I was in a lecture hall the next day. I stripped off all my clothes. I climbed to the top of a pillar, and then we had a lecture. And then one of the guys, those he was an older guy. He was funny. He was popular, and he was nasty.
No.
And he said something to me about my body. And in that moment, I thought, I'm not mad enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not, right? So I've always conveyed this very outwardly, this very positive, confident guy. But I was dying inside, particularly in my intimate relationships. And I realized that the more I covered myself up, and I use naked as a metaphor, right? I mean, it's personal. The more I covered myself up, the smaller I became. And now, it's consensual. That's why I asked you. I said, naked. You said, okay, fine, turn the camera on. It's got to be consensual, because then people can relax into it. If I just turn the cameras on and came like full frontal, it's like, whoa, And so what I'm learning is that the metaphor, because I'm confronting my deepest, it was my biggest fear. I can actually deal with any fear now. Anything. I don't care. It's not scared. Of course I get scared.
Wow.
But there's nothing I can't deal with, which is an amazing feeling. And so that's really the gist of my work now, Dylan, is to say we have one life. We think the ego thinks we'll live forever. We don't even have this minute. Enjoy your day. What's that even mean? I don't have that. So this is what I'm trying to put out into the world, is we have a very short space of time to live. And we're doing all this work, AI. I want to talk to you about AI. We're living in a world that is becoming, in yours and my world, I imagine, is becoming more and more comfortable, and more predictable, and more, more comfortable. And I do cold swimming, and I go around, I like to get naked in the cold, because I've got to keep my edge. I think we've got to keep our edge as human beings, because there's so much that sits within us, but because of, I'm kind of ranting now, but that's, I'm going to draw breath for a moment. Maybe you've got some things to ask or some things to question.
No. I was just having a look to see the next questions that I had lined up. I was trying to think how I can bring this back to, I think what's important for my audiences is, a lot of my audiences, they are, some of them are leaders, and some, all of them I encourage everyone to be a thought leader in their space, to own the space. And a very big part of owning your space is to find a unique voice, and your tribe as well, is to find your tribe and to identify you're not for everybody. You're not for everybody. Not everybody likes me. I hopped on a call the other day with also a well-known speaker in some circles, and I just offended him left, right, and center. Completely offended him. He was...
Oh.
Yes. Very
no, you didn't. No, you didn't offend him. You said stuff and he took offense.
There we go. He took offense. Yes, I agree. But it's funny, because from here, I knew that he was going to be in that state, because before I even hopped on the call, I had a premonition he was going to be like this. It's so weird that you speak about, like, hearing from here, which is what I call spirit is here and head is chaos. So I love that you're doing this. I love that you have your message and you have your tribe. And I think it's important when we are vulnerable is, there's a verse that says, do not cast your pearls before swine. is to not be vulnerable. I think you have to choose who you're vulnerable with and not be vulnerable with everyone, because I think that's foolishness. You have to guard your heart. And I also think that, but I do think that it's important to know what you stand for and to have your message and to have your audience and the people that you resonate with, and to know I'm not for everyone. Because the minute I realized, look, on a website, like when you look at website analytics, probably about 94% of people click away from a website. That means that you are not for 94% of people. 94% of people that land on your website click away and they're not interested. But maybe 6 to 10% of people are interested, and that's your niche. That's your niche. So you just focus on the tribe that gets you and that, you resonate with, and the rest must be warm and well fed.
So question to you, if I may. I mean, how do you differentiate yourself? What do you
That's a horrible question to ask a marketer how they market themselves. The cobbler's children. So my business is a B2B business that specializes in thought leadership and lead generation. So that's how my business differentiates itself. How I differentiate myself is a different question, because I actually don't know. I am a marketer's marketer, an entrepreneur, and I am playing around in this whole sort of, I don't want to call it thought leadership space, but personal branding space, as an experiment to see like what works. How do you engage with people? What do people want to hear? What kind of content do people respond to? So I do like to understand the space, because it's an interesting space. Some content I find quite cringy, like people that are out there just like talking about how great they are and how much they know. I find that kind of content cringy. And for a long time, I created that kind of content, and I've stopped. Because it's hard to create content that people really want to hear and that hits the spot, especially when you got the camera in front of you. I find that the best kind of content I create is either during a meeting or straight after a meeting. The insight that I garnered from that meeting, I must just capture the essence of that, and then create a content around that. So that's kind of, I don't know. What do you think?
How was that for you what you just relayed to me? How did you experience that? What's your, like, if you were come to look back on what you said, how would you rate yourself? Like, it's
terrible. That was just a big waffle of nothing.
Okay, so then now check this out. I'm going to ask one big question, and then it's just, I don't want it to be, but this is just a flow, and I didn't know.
This is how you are. I think you are someone who just thinks like that. This is just who you are. You like to understand people.
So here's a question. And then if you're listening, when you're listening to this, audience, just check what happens here. So Dylan, what was or is your father's name? First name, and what was the greatest lesson you learned from your father?
My father's first name was Michael, and I remember one day telling him on the phone that I'd driven badly or parked badly or something, and I said to him, "It's because I'm a woman, ha ha." And he said, "Never say those words, never say those words." And so that for me, and I was only about 20 at this time, and I remember that really, hit home. And he was a great entrepreneur as well. I learned a lot from his entrepreneurial journey.
Nice. So how was that?
That was lovely. That was lovely. That was not at all, that was completely different to what I just came from feeling. So when you asked me to talk about myself, and it just became all cringy and weird, and the spotlight was on me and I felt awkward. But the minute I told you a story, I don't know, what are you doing? What voodoo is this?
Wow. It's just storytelling. A story goes to the heart, logic goes to the head, for one of them.
That's true.
Yeah. And there's all sorts. So what happened there was yours and mine, and the listeners, dopamine and serotonin got activated because you were playing out a movie. I could see.
I could also see it. No, I was there. I remember it, everything.
And some reason you had a beard, and I could see him on the phone. I could see him being really straight with you, and you're like, wow. And that was the movie, and it was my movie that you shared your movie I got my movie, and everyone else listening to this will get their own movie. I mean, that's priceless, right? So I think, the thing about storytelling, you asked about public speaking and so on and so forth. There's a beautiful phrase I heard the other day, which was, the more personal the speech, the broader the reach.
Ooh, that's clever.
So I think, what I observe about you is, and this is good, professional, intelligent, what's the word I'm looking for? Well organized. There's something else, they're like, and you had some great podcasts and that can be your brand like that. You don't have to be the naked speaker. You're a facilitator, as I see it, for these amazing conversations and amazing people. And I think our stories, I'm sure you felt this is why you do a business presentation. It's almost like the public agreement is there's no space for personal stories, and yet everyone is waiting. Like if you said, I've got this story to tell you, I shouldn't really be telling you this in a business presentation, but I'm going to tell it anyway. And it was my first date. And then people are like, because we're wired for emotion. We think we're wired for rationality.
When I look at CEOs of big global companies, American CEOs, or specifically, I think American CEOs, they are being extremely vulnerable on LinkedIn, in their social content, very vulnerable, like Dear Diary kind of stuff. And, South African CEOs, and I think, many other countries, you don't even see them. They're not even posting. And those that are posting are just keeping it safe and professional and that. And I think there's a fine line. I suppose you have to, at the end of the day, it has to resonate with who you are and your audience and what you stand for. But I think I think more and more people are becoming, putting heart on the sleeve, and that's being part of their identity. And there's more of a merge between private life and business, and less of a stark, dividing line between the two.
Yeah, and I think this for me at least, this segues into male and female, feminine and masculine. Someone described the interplay between the feminine and the masculine as the feminine being a river, flow and energy, moving in a downwards direction, but without, and then the masculine is the riverbank. So without the riverbank, and then if it's just a riverbank, then, and there's no water, the two need to play with each other. And I think that, my wish with females in the workplace and in general is that they show more of themselves, more of the stuff, generalizing usually, but like the more of the stuff that you guys are really good at, compassion, understanding, collaboration. And I always think it's such a shame when, for me at least, when I see a woman who is pretty obviously trying to compete in a male world, kind of almost in her male energy. I think, we all have male and female energy within us that moves through. I've got a piece here about the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine. So the healthy masculine is holding. Holding is like a soft place to fall. The healthy feminine is flow. And then the unhealthy masculine is controlling.
Oh, I've seen that. That was very clever when I saw that.
Yeah.
I remember that diagram. Very, very clever diagram. Maybe do a lot of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think.
And the last one's the unhealthy feminine is neediness.
And then I've worked with a lot of toxic females. Just, I think I've been a toxic female boss as well. And very early in my career, I was absolutely I was terrified, and my staff were just machines. I didn't care about them. They must just do the work. I don't care about your day. When one of my staff members told me they were pregnant, I said, "What have you done?" But I was like, you've just ruined your whole life. I was sitting there literally checking by the minute who was in and who was out. And like that team broke me down and they crushed me to dust. And they taught me and they relaxed me. And I think I'm a lot better now. But
Yeah. Thanks for
yeah,
sharing
I
that.
think it's about growing and your personal journey of growth.
So, what do you think listeners would be asking now at this point in our
Well,
conversation?
my question for you, just as we wrap up, is, you know, what are you focusing on now? Because you're a speaker and you're a coach, and there's a lot of things that you do. And what should people reach out to you for? Is it what's your talk of the day? What's your keynote that you're working on at the moment? Are you coaching?
There's only 7 questions there. No, it's fine. I will just, no, it's perfect. Yeah, so my main keynote, Richard Mulholland, I think is a mutual friend of ours. He's been I think he's been on your show. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, he's an amazing guy, and he's been very supportive of my naked speaker journey.
Mm.
And and as he said, and as we were talking about before, if you're appealing to everyone, you're appealing to no one.
Mm.
And normal is the new boring. So
Mm.
we have to find. So for me, you know my elevator pitch, what do you do? I'm the naked speaker. I mean, that's like, I don't claim anything on it, but it's kind of genius because people, what you want is
Mm.
is a pitch where people go, huh? What's
Yeah, you
that?
want to be memorable. You want to stand out. This definitely stands out.
Absolutely. And I'm like, naked insurance, the naked chef, the naked scientist, get your clothes off. Then we can talk, right?
Yeah.
But but the get your clothes off piece, what I noticed for myself, the first time I ever did a speech, uh, and I took my clothes off. I mean, it was a trial to friends and fools, friends and family. Not family, good God. I don't think my mother even has joined the dots, and I'm the naked speaker. But the moment I got out of my head and into my body and took my clothes off, and I don't do this all the time. So this was pilot sessions and so on and so forth. But like it was like closing a door to a barn on a windy day. It's just like, so that's what I'm discovering about nakedness, vulnerability, is that it just, all the noise just disappears, and we can just sink into what's actually got truth.
That.
So this naked piece for me is very, very important. I thank those assholes who said what they did, because if they hadn't said what they did, I wouldn't be here now. And what I'm really wanting to convey to people is your vulnerability, those things that you fear, is nothing you'd have to worry about. Face it. I can show you how to do it. I've overcome my own demons. And if you can do that,
Yeah.
it's easy, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
easy. So
Love it. I love it, Simon. And I love that you are living your truth. And I'm excited to see where this takes you. And thank you so much for your openness and vulnerability, sharing your journey with us. And guys, we've got all of Simon's contacts in the description below. Do reach out to him. And yeah, Simon, thank you so much. It's been really, really, this has probably been the craziest podcast I've ever had.
that's a compliment. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been
And please, will the listeners reach out to me, and I will send them. I've written a process of how to unlock where you want to be and overcome this chimpanzee in the head. It's called a 4-step process, which I call Mojo. And so if listeners want to mail me, and then I can mail them that PDF document.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great idea. Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you guys for tuning in today, and have an awesome day. Be vulnerable and tell your story.
Get naked.
Get naked.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you, Simon.